extends to the people that you employ in your franchise as well. You know, can they relate to the individuals, their own stories, where they've come from? Can they understand and recognise what opportunities there are out there, which is really important. And I think, you know, if are you going to bring Guillermo in at this point in time? I think it's important, again, the culture. You know, we have a very distinct culture in the UK in terms of whenever we're buying something or investing or investigating something.
I think what we're going to do today, actually, if this is all right with you, Simon, I think what we're going to do is we'll bring Guillermo in, and we can start to talk about the differences in recruitment between different regions. You know, we have 3 people on. We'll make this good fun. So, if you have just joined us today, this is the Franchise Show. And we were going to be talking about franchising in Latin America. We are talking about recruitment with the ever-wise Simon Wise. But first, we are going to have a third guest. So I am going to bring in the wonderful Guillermo. And here he is. Welcome.
Hola. Hi. Hola. How are you?
Very good. How are you, my friend?
Dang, I'm very fine. Sorry about the delay. I confused the time.
Not a problem at all. Let me very quickly pause. So this is the Franchise Show, and we are now all talking about franchise recruitment. And we've got 2 wonderful perspectives today. We've got this perspective of Simon Wise from FranRec here in the UK. And we've also got the perspective of Guillermo Quintana, who's based in Peru. So it's going to be really interesting to see the differences in how you recruit in these different regions. So Guillermo, first of all, welcome to the Franchise Show. Great to have you with us. Perhaps you could give a little brief introduction to yourself and what you do.
Yes, we have been working in the franchising industry since 1997, almost 15 years. And we have helping a lot of Latin America entrepreneurs to migrate their businesses to the franchising business model. We have been helping also to promote the micro franchising, because most of our companies here in Latin America are micro and small businesses. So we help these people to grow their business in the market. And also we have a franchising portal named expansionfranquicia.com. And we have been working in this industry since 15 years ago.
Wow, great, fantastic. And I mean, how do you find? Is it an emerging industry there in Peru? You say you've been working there 15 years. You know, how long has franchising been going in your region?
Yes, well, in Peru, we have the first franchising company which operates as a franchising model in 1981. It was Kentucky Fried Chicken at the 90s years. This when the Peruvian government opened the foreign investment and promote the global market in the local economy. And a lot of American companies landed in Peruvian market and Latin American market, as McDonald's, Starbucks, Burger King, Pizza Hut, among others. In this moment, happened that Peruvian business and local entrepreneurs learn about this successful business model and has started to apply the franchising model to expand their businesses in this first stage. No? And comes the first Peruvian franchising as Bembo's, Mediterranean Chicken, Pasti Pizza. So you already know that the Peruvian food is very famous around the world. And we have different kind of foods, food from the coast, from the highlands, from the jungle.
Interesting. Is there any, if I could ask, is there any legislation that operates in your country for franchising? Is there disclosure law?
It's a good question. There's no regulation and rules in Latin America beside Mexico and Brazil.
Okay, and it's interesting actually, and it's a great question there, Simon. And Guillermo, as somebody who's can experience both with and without regulation, what do you think fares better? You know, what's perhaps the more successful way of doing it with a more regulated arrangement, or something perhaps where you can be a bit more creative?
I would say that for our market that are small, I think that there's no reason to put many regulations. I think that we need to grow, and then probably we need more regulation. No, I know that in United States and Mexico and Brazil, they have a lot of regulations, a lot of rules. But I would say that most of the countries in Latin America, they don't have a big franchising market. I would say that probably later we'll need a regulation.
Sure. No, fantastic. I mean, what if you're a brand in another part of the world and you're looking to expand into the Latin America region? What's the best sort of, what are the steps you should take in doing that? I mean, obviously seek some professional advice, but is there a sort of series of things that's worth considering when you're in the region? Do all brands work in Latin America, do you think?
I will say that the first tip will say that cultural. We have different cultural reasons. We need to tropicalize the brands to different cultures. Only in Peru we have many different cultures. Imagine the whole Latin America. No? Also, I would say that there's a lot of high food consumption in restaurants, high coffee consumption on the streets. There's a business growth trend with a franchisee model. And also Latin American societies always look for new offers from foreign brands from different countries, different regions, from Europe, from the United States, from Canada. They are all also looking for these different brands.
No, fantastic. That's really interesting to hear. It's interesting to hear you speak of culture. Simon and I were discussing before you came on about cultures and values and how that works in the recruitment process, and and understanding somebody's values and how they fit into a culture of a business. It's one thing, different cultures for different regions, but there are different cultures within organizations, and it's really important, I think, to understand those cultures. We do that here definitely through asking good questions and really understanding what that is. Is there I mean, let's talk recruitment, Guillermo, for a while. This is a subject that is really important. And when I say recruitment, I'm talking about two things: recruiting new franchisees and recruiting your key team members. How is that sort of done in your region? Do you use brokers? Do you use portals? What's the way you attract new potential franchisees generally?
Most of the time we use brokers, we use portals, and we use chambers of commerce that help us to recruit and find the main people that are looking to invest in franchising. We need to look that these people have to have experience in these sectors. If we talk about the gastronomy, we need to help find people who has already business in this sector. So this is the way that we find franchising candidates.
So can I just, sorry, Javier, it's just really interesting that, because I mean, that is the key, isn't it, to anybody that's looking to go into a market, enter into a new region, is to get a flavour for the recruitment. How easy is it to recruit franchisees? What's coming across from what you're saying, Guillermo, is the QSR and the F&B sector is very, very strong in Latin America, and that's where the potential lies. Is that what you're saying in terms of any new franchisors coming into the region?
Yes. Also, we try to look people that have financial support, because in the first years of the franchisee, they need to support with their own budget. So we need people who has financial support to support their.
Okay, so they're the existing business owners. Then is that what we see? You see a lot of in Latin America. So conversion franchising, people that are operating independently, albeit in a food sector.
most of the people who we try to find there, they have this profile.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Simon, have you, in your experience of recruiting individuals and working with companies that have an international presence, what sort of person, what sort of character, or what sort of mindset does someone have to be able to work on an international level? Is it having the right contacts? Is it more?
Yeah, we have done some. We did some recruitment actually for. We did some recruitment in Central Europe, and we did some recruitment in Latin America as well. For some global brands that are based in the UK. It might sound obvious, but language skills are really important. Understanding and being able to embrace different cultures as well, and being very open-minded about different customs and values in different countries. But the beauty of franchising, the skills are very transferable, aren't they, in terms of the disciplines that you need if you're an employee or a key member, be it in a marketing or a franchise development or operational support role. Those skills are fairly universal. But yeah, for us, the biggest challenge was the language skills and having people that understood the life cycle of franchising in that particular marketplace. That was very significant. And it wasn't an easy search, but we did find somebody for sure.
No, absolutely, I'm sure. But it's interesting with language. Obviously there's one language, which is the language you speak, but there's all sorts of other nuances to language, and and how that comes across, and the culture and the people that you're dealing with. Guillermo, how does that? What's the sort of mindset? What's the sort of persona of a typical franchisee that you've seen? But what does a franchisee look like in your region?
Well, I will also like to mention that there is some disadvantages of starting with franchising in Latin America. Is lack of legal framework and political turbulence. There's a lot of countries in Latin America. There is always political turbulence, and I don't know if you know that McDonald's, the only country that has failed McDonald's in the world, was Bolivia, because the radical political ideologies and insecure citizens also, and lack of access to rural areas inside the country. So this is important to people who lives in another continents and countries that have learning in this video. It's important to know this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting you say that. I mean, because there are, when you're dealing with a region that's got some political difficulties, and you're trying to run a business and recruit people, it's just that extra, it's an additional challenge beyond the normal challenges of running a franchise. I mean, typically, how long do franchisees operate their businesses? Is it, the contracts, sort of 5 or 10 years, or is it shorter term things in your region?
The contract last average is 5 years here in Latin America, and they have to renew it for 5 years
so
more.
Pretty similar here. Yeah, absolutely. And the sort of the demographic of, we've spoken there of the demographic of a franchisee. Is and we've spoken about the fact that QSR brands work. Is there a sort of a gap in the market in Latin America for a type of business that you think would work really well that currently isn't been represented in the region?
Well, according to the studies and research in Latin America, there are about 5,600 franchisees, where 60% of these are international brands that comes from another country, and only 40% are local brands. And of the local franchisee, more than 95% of these local brands has not crossed the borders. And the average number of units per brand in Latin America is 40 units. In Peru, the country that I am from, there are only 4 units per brands. So we are 10 times less developed than the average of the region. beyond seeing it as a disadvantage, it seems an opportunity to grow the sector. No? And
I mean, look, if I was a QSR brand and I wanted to come into Latin America, you know, and for what you said so far, it makes perfect sense to look at master franchising, you know, because of the intricacies and the cultural differences, etc., etc. What is the availability of master franchise investors like in Latin America? Is it quite healthy? So if somebody was to come in and take over, have the master franchise rights for the whole region, is that a viable way of growing in your marketplace?
I would recommend that the people who lives in another country in another region see Latin America as a whole country, and they can come and land their brands and choose one country as the headquarters and then expand to the whole Latin America, because we have a same culture, we have the same language, so you can expand the whole Latin America, and beside also Brazil, that they have another language, Portuguese. And also Mexico has the same language.
And what would be the most franchise-friendly country to do that in if you were to launch? What would you say?
I would say the regulation and the political turbulence.
So where would that lead me to launch? Which country? Peru, Brazil?
What country? I would say Chile. I would choose three: Chile, Peru, and probably Uruguay.
Okay.
Now.
No, that's really interesting. We've got a question here, and welcome Johnny to the show. Johnny is a franchise auditor, and he's based in Los Angeles. Now he's put: are there any specific cultural impediments to collecting royalties in Latin American regions? Do you have any difficulties at all in collecting your royalty payments, you know, or are people generally in the culture good in terms of paying their royalties and that side of the business?
The average of royalty here comes from 3% to 8% monthly. And yes, there are some problems to collect the royalty, but there's a lot of the franchisee chain, they have their own software, and most of the franchisee, they specify flat franchisee, not percentage, they specify a flat, so they don't have the problem to control indicators.
That's a really interesting point, and I think when you're expanding internationally, having a flat fee like that can work really well, because like you say, you don't have to then think about or monitor those sales. So it's a really important one to think about when you are looking potentially to expand into this region, to consider that as a model rather than royalty. But look, thanks for that question, Johnny. Really appreciate that. Let us know if you've got any other questions. Now, look, we've got a couple of questions here. One for you, Simon. So we're going to go for that one first.
That'll teach me to be on this side of the screen, won't it?
Yeah, that's it. You're not asking, you're answering today. So this is a question for you, Simon, from Jitin. And Jitin's put: Simon, from a talent recruitment perspective in franchising, what is the average time frame from a people retention standpoint? I'm assuming in QSR this is lower compared to other industries.
I mean, look, I can only really talk about this from the franchisor side of things. I mean, I don't recruit staff for franchisees, so restaurant staff, etc. You know, when we're looking at retention periods, I mean, that is an issue. That is an issue within the franchising sector. I would say the average is about 3 years, 3 years in post. That's if you take an example of somebody who's doing a franchise support and development role. And that creates a few problems. You know, what's important to the franchisee is longevity, is basically making sure they've got that, you know, frontline support staff that have experience of walking them, taking them through their franchising life cycle, because that's really how they're going to benefit the business. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's a massive red flag, but I mean, look, in my experience, people tend to change quite significantly during their career, and 3 years is about the average, which can create its own problems, which is why a lot of focus is not just put on from a recruitment point of view in terms of recruiting the right individuals that have a very clearly mapped out career path, so they know exactly where they're headed for from day one. but to build in retention strategies as well, because that is vitally important to the stability of the network and the performance of the network as well. It can be very destabilizing if you have, you know, frontline boots on the ground people that are changing every 12 months. As I said, you're going back to square one all the time. So, you know, we can help by making sure the right people are recruited at the front end, but more needs to be done in certain quarters. And yeah, I would say maybe the QSR sector is a bit more volatile in terms of the number of times people are changing within that sort of franchise or support infrastructure. But yeah, it's recruitment, it's retention, you know, getting the right person on board, but then making sure that they're gonna stay with you for the life cycle of the franchise business.
Thank you. No, that's great. I mean, it's really interesting. You said there about retention strategies. You know, what sort of thing do you mean by that? What sort of things help a business keep those key members of staff?
You know, it's not rocket science. It's about engaging, making sure you're engaging with your employees. You know, it's not about some fandangoed algorithm that you need to get out and, you know, it's about talking to people and communicating with them. And in recruitment, it's about keeping your promises. You know, you'll have a performance review every 6 months and make sure it happens every 6 months so that individual is on the right pathway. You know, if you're looking to attract people into a position where they might have to take a bit of a step back from a salary point of view, but the end game is a rapid career progression and promotion through the business. You've got to make sure that you're delivering on that. So it's not rocket science. It's more common sense and listening and engaging with people. Employee engagement is huge, and in franchising that means involving people in key decision making processes as well, and don't isolate individuals, because, you know, in terms of franchising, the people that have at the sharp end, those individuals that are actually working with franchisees day in, day out, will give you a vast amount of information and insight into the performance of the network and how things can move on. So really, it's just coming down to the right people in the right seats and communicating and engaging with them, and putting a lot of time and effort into retaining that talent and supporting them and developing their career with training. You know, in franchising, we have the QFP, for example. What a brilliant way to recognize people in franchising, by giving them the opportunity to turn their skills and experience into a professional qualification that will help them. So there are good franchisors that continually develop and invest in the progression of their key employees and really help people nurture and develop through their life cycle within the organization.
Absolutely. No, that's a fantastic answer to that question. And Nick's put here, absolutely right. Retention is not rocket science, but it's also surprising how few companies understand what to do. Yeah.
I could give you a list. I'm not going to, but I could give you a list of the top 10 reasons why people come to me and say, Simon, find me a new job. And they're usually because they're not being listened to, and they don't feel valued within an organization. You know, it's not difficult.
No, exactly. Guillermo, I want to hand things over to you. We've got a question here from Jitin for you. But before we move on to that, actually, let's take that question that Simon's just answered and see how that applies to you. So in terms of retaining your people, so I'm talking, we could talk about front end staff within the QSRs, but let's talk for now about, let's say, a franchise development manager, you know, someone who's key to growing that business and looking after those franchisees. What's the sort of timescale for someone like that? How long do they stay in their jobs? You know, is it a high turnover, or, you know, do people tend to stick about for a number of years?
I would say first something important that is related to recruitment franchising partners that happen here in Latin America, and from the years experience working with many companies, I will say that a mortality rate of a business started only by itself in the market is 20%, 27%, and the mortality rate of a business starting with a franchisee model is only 5%, since they share the risk with the whole chain of partners of the brand. And with about the question that you asked, tell me, yes, I would say that it's a high term relationship with this manager, with the whole chains, that they need to promote training with these people and avoid to the people go from the company.
Absolutely. It's really interesting to hear you say that stat, those percentages, that only 5% of the businesses are failing that are part of a franchise business, because that's a stat that I'm glad to hear is consistent, actually, because that's very similar here. We had the wonderful Pip from the BFA on franchising brand stories, who confirmed a very similar figure. So it's wonderful to see that franchising can carry across to a different culture, a different region, but as a entity, franchising adds to the strength and the foundation of any business. So that's really wonderful to hear. Let's have a quick look at another question here for Guillermo from Jitten. Let's have a look. Guillermo, would you say the barrier to entry for a franchisee is much more easier? What do franchisors do to exhibit and advertise their brands to attract? Okay, yeah, that's a good one. So in terms of attracting new business as a franchisor, do you have exhibitions in Latin America? Is that a good way to promote your business, or are there better ways to do it?
Yes, we have many franchising fairs here in Latin America. And the second main is located in Bogota, Colombia. The first one is in Brazil. And then we have small franchisee fairs in different countries, I would say 2 times per year. And you can come with your brand and show all the benefits of your franchisee to different local Latin American investors.
No, it's fantastic. That may be an interesting way for someone to start to promote their brand within some of these regions. Would you say it's a good starting point, or is it better for a more established brand?
No, I would say that probably with the new brands and also to establish, but you have a lot of opportunities here, a lot of exhibitions and a lot of fairs to show your opportunity in investment.
Fantastic. We are starting to come towards the end today. If you have just joined us, this is the Franchise Show, and we are talking franchise recruitment. We are talking franchising in Latin America, and it's been a fascinating conversation. I will be posting links to the replay of this particular episode, but if you're interested in franchising in Latin America and the latest in franchise recruitment, check out this. And I'm going to give these 2 wonderful gentlemen a chance in a moment to talk about what they do and the best way to get in contact. So first of all, Simon, could you let us know a little bit, remind people about your business again and the best way to get in contact with yourself should you want to access your wonderful services?
Yep, they're very welcome to write to me. No, just kidding.
Carrier pigeon, yeah.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, I'm a recruiter. My passion is franchising, and put those 2 together, I'm a very effective recruiter for both staff and executives for franchisors. That's what I do, basically. And people can find me on LinkedIn, or they can send me an email at simon@franrec.co.uk.
Fantastic. Wonderful. And the same goes to you, Guillermo. So if somebody is looking to get some advice, bring their business to Latin America, wants to talk to yourself, what's the best way to get in contact with you, and explain a little bit about your current business and services as well?
Yes, you can contact to our website, a franchisee portal named expansionfranquicia.com, and we're gonna be with the door opens to help you to land your brands in Latin America. We help also to migrate business models to the franchising business models, and we also we work as a brokers, and we help to recruit franchisors here in Latin America, and we also manage a business incubator named Pro Emprender, and we promote the micro franchising business model. I will also mention that we launched a cinematographic entrepreneurship documentary named Day by Day, The Entrepreneurial Way, where we show 5 business company history, where 2 of them has grown successfully applying the franchising business model. We have been showing this in the cinema before the COVID, but now you can find it also in YouTube channel.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for those introductions. What I will do is I'll put a link in the comments today, a link to both your services so that people can click on that should they wish to. So before we finish off today, if either of you have got any final thoughts on both franchising in Latin America, first of all to you, Guillermo. So if you could give just your final roundup of sort of your current thoughts on franchising in Latin America as a bit of a last message to our audience, that would be great.
Well, I will start to mention again the advantage of starting franchising in Latin America. There's a dynamic entrepreneurial business ecosystem. There's a high food consumption in restaurants, high coffee consumption on the streets, a business growth trend with the franchising models, and Latin American society is always looking for new offer from foreign brands from different countries, different continents. And there are some disadvantages also, lack of legal framework and political turbulence, radical political ideologies and insecure citizens, and lack of access to rural areas inside the countries. And also say that thank you a lot for this invitation and being here to promote this business model that is franchising.
You're very welcome. Same to you, Simon. Any final thoughts before we wrap up in terms of recruitment that you'd like to offer?
I think in terms of recruitment, I think you just think outside of the box and be creative. Know your franchising brand story. Know who you're looking to recruit. Have your ideal profile, your ideal avatar worked out. Don't just immediately go towards the portals without looking at your own website and your own organic recruitment. And be creative. Think outside the box, and know who you want, and that will guide you on the right pathway. It isn't rocket science. It's very, very people focused, people centric. Staff recruitment as well as franchisee recruitment. It's all about personalities and finding the right fit, culture, values, as well as those hard skills and experience we've talked about. So
really important. Yeah. Thank you for that final roundup. Well, thank you both to you, Guillermo, and to you, Simon, for your time today. It's been a fascinating conversation, and thank you to everybody who's joined us in the audience today. This show is only what it is because of the wonderful community that supports it. A couple of things before we finish. I'd like to let you know that coming up this Thursday on Franchising Brand Stories, we have the wonderful Andrew Withers from FFS Brands, Southern Fried Chicken, being part of that. Fascinating story behind the brand, and it's going to be really, really good and interesting to find out what that is. So join us Thursday, 5:15 GMT, 12:15 EST for that. Next week on the Franchise Show, we have a bit of a special one. It's going to be coming live from our wonderful sponsors at Sky. Sky AdSmart sponsoring this show, and we're doing the show live from the Sky Studios. So it won't be my Harry Potter-esque under the stairs office or my London office. You'll be in the Sky Studios. So that's going to be a very exciting one. We're going to be talking with the lovely Kurt Edwards from Sky AdSmart, and we're going to be talking about franchise TV advertising. So please join us for that next Tuesday, 5:15 GMT, 12:15 EST. Until then, take good care. Have a wonderful week in franchising, and goodbye.